Welcome to the All About You podcast. After my last podcast with Maarten about osteopathy, we continued to talk about functional breathing. This conversation was so interesting that I have decided to publish it as a second podcast, so enjoy. I know we want to talk about functional breathing. Breathing is something we do day in and day out. We don't really think about it unless we get a shock and you sort of hold your breath, or you've run for the bus and you're a bit, oh my God, I'm so unfit. That's probably the only time we ever think about our breath. What is functional breathing?
Functional breathing is breathing in the way that it is intended to be done, which basically means that we need to breathe through our nose, we need to use our diaphragm, so we need to breathe deeply, and also we need to breathe less than what we usually do. To come back to the first one, so breathe through the nose. There's nothing made in the mouth really for breathing, except that it's a big hole and it can inhale and exhale a large amount of air, so it's there as a backup airway. But the nose is specifically designed for breathing. Right, so it filters, it humidifies, it heats the air as it comes in. It will release nitric oxide, which is very important for distributing the airflow in the lungs and cleaning the air and all these kind of things. And it has many, many functions in the human body. Then we have, breathing with the diaphragm, because a lot of times when we are stressed, we tend to breathe upper chest, right, with the shoulders and the neck becoming very tense. When you breathe diaphragmatically, it basically means that you lower your diaphragm. I don't think many people think about this breathing, but it's not like we suck in the air, but it's basically the diaphragm that lowers in our abdomen, and then we create a negative pressure in the lungs so the air can flow in, basically. And that will basically happen when you lower your diaphragm. It will open up the lower lungs mainly, but if we don't do that, then we have to open up most of the upper lungs, which cause a lot of action of the helper breathing muscles, which cause tension in the neck and etc. etc.
That is fascinating. We don't even think about our breathing, do we, to be honest? And it's not unless you meet a singer and for them breathing is everything, as in to hold the notes, to get the high notes. Normal day-to-day life, we don't even think about our breathing. And we generally rubbish the way we breathe. We sort of breathe quickly, we breathe shallow, we take a big gulp of air every so often and start coughing, and we're not very good at breathing, are we?
No, I mean, in general, not really. But the good thing is you can learn it. You can relearn it, basically. When you look at babies sleeping, for example, they mainly breathe through their nose as well. And at some point we start breathing through our mouths. Maybe it's our posture or many different causes for it. But one of the things is that we tend to breathe too much air, right? So we think that we need to breathe in more air so we get more oxygen in. This is something that is counterintuitive, but we actually need to breathe less air because we always think about oxygen. That's the main gas in breathing, but actually it's not. It's a 3-gas system. So it's oxygen, carbon dioxide, which is CO2, and then we have the nitric oxide. And nitric oxide has been researched in the recent years. There's actually been a Nobel Prize for the research. I forgot the names, but the researchers who discovered the properties of this gas. But let's go back to CO2, carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide is actually the stimulus for us to breathe. So we have these sensors in our brainstem, and they will sense the amount of CO2 in our blood. And if the amount of CO2 in our blood is high enough, it will trigger a response for us to breathe. And that doesn't have anything to do with oxygen. It has to do with the sensitivity of the CO2. So if we breathe out a lot of air, we breathe out a lot of this CO2 because we have these very sensitive chemosensors. The problem is we want to keep as much of CO2 in our body as we can because CO2 is important for the release of oxygen from the red blood cells to our tissues. So we can breathe in all the oxygen that we want, but if we don't have CO2, it will never reach our tissues because we will just breathe it back out again.
I think I'm with you so far.
Yeah, I hope I'm explaining this.
No. You are doing a brilliant job. When we yawn, does that mean need to take in.
It means you're tired.
But does it also mean that we need a big gulp of oxygen?
No.
It's not. This is an old wives' tale.
I think numbers-wise, oxygen will only be the primary driver for breathing when it drops down below 50% of saturation. And normally we will have something like 95% of saturation, somewhere between 90 and 100, mainly around 95% of saturation of oxygen in our blood, right? So when we breathe in the air consists of several gases, right? And the oxygen that we want is necessary for our processes in the cells, because we have these little engines in our cells and they need fuel because they need to produce energy. And this energy comes from basically deconstructing these fuels, and that releases energy. To be able to deconstruct these fuels like carbohydrates and fats and sometimes proteins, we need oxygen. And so oxygen is necessary for this process, and that's why we need oxygen in our body to have the energy for all the processes that are going on for us, like sitting here, moving, eating, talking, drinking, everything. And then the CO2 that we breathe in is also very important, because we need this oxygen to go to these little factories where these processes take place to produce the energy, but they need to get there, the oxygen molecules, and they need CO2 for that, because otherwise you can see maybe the red blood cells as a sort of a cruise ship basically going through our blood vessels, and they need to release these oxygen molecules from these cruise ships to the tissues, and that's where CO2 comes into play, and nitric oxide as well, but mainly CO2. We don't have enough CO2, the oxygen will stay on the cruise ship and will just go back out again. So we cannot use it.
You are so good at explaining things. That is absolutely brilliant. Functional breathing. How can I practice functional breathing?
So there's different ways you can do it. So I got really interested into what functional breathing is, and I actually did a training as a functional breathing coach from the Oxygen Advantage Institute, which is an institute by Patrick McEwen. So that's how I got into the all the exercises and the theory behind it and everything. And you can do several exercises, and there's a lot of exercises you can find on the internet, on YouTube, on TikTok, whatever. But it depends on, same as with an osteopathic treatment, why do you need functional breathing, and what is the specific area that you need to focus on? Because sometimes people need to breathe a little bit more through the nose. They need to train to learn to breathe less air so as to keep more oxygen into the body. Some people need to train their diaphragm, so it's very individual.
I mean, I'm just thinking about the average person who's had a very, very stressful day at work. When we're in a stressful situation, we generally breathe very rapidly, very shallow, and that's the last thing we want to do, because we're breathing quickly but shallow. That's increasing the heart rate, the blood pressure goes up, and the whole thing's just a horrible mess.
Exactly.
Whereas when we are stressed, we actually probably need to do the opposite to that. We need to say, okay, the first thing I've got to do is just try and slow my breathing down, make it more regular, because I guess it's going back to this fight or flight in a stressful situation. So we've got to slow it down, not try and take great big gulps of air as if we're drowning, and just try and get everything back on an even keel. Easier said than done, I appreciate 100%.
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely correct what you say. When people are stressed, or when there's a lot of anxiety, we tend to breathe rapidly and shallow, which is basically some form of hyperventilation, right? And hyperventilation is nothing more than breathing too much air. So have a high minute volume, basically. And what happens when you breathe a lot of air in and out, you basically lose all the CO2 from your body that you want in your body to be able to oxygenate the tissues. Now, what happens when you're stressed? You give your brain the signal that you're not safe. And basically by doing these calming breathing exercises, the functional breathing exercises, you want to tell the brain that you're safe. So if you're hyperventilating, even for as little as a minute, blood flow to the brain can decrease by about 40 to 50%. So that's already a lot.
That's enormous.
That's enormous. By breathing functionally, you can actually reverse this quite easily. So you can increase the blood flow in the right direction, basically. So if you're breathing rapidly and shallow, and your brain is already not feeling safe, you're only making things worse. Right? And if somebody says take a deep breath, maybe that's not always the right advice to give somebody. There are some positive sides to that, because if you take a deep breath, and that does not mean a full breath, but a deep breath means activating your diaphragm, you will balance your autonomic nervous system a little bit more. And if you focus on the exhale a little bit more instead of the inhale, so if you elongate your exhale, you will stimulate the parasympathetic branch of this autonomic nervous system. And I always talk about this autonomic nervous system as it's kind of the nervous system of our body that regulates all the processes in the background that we don't need to think about. And it has a gas pedal and a brake pedal. And if we're stressed, the gas pedal goes on and we kind of enter this fight or flight situation. And the brake pedal is more for the rest and digest and recover.
My understanding is, and please correct me here, if we learn some basic functional breathing techniques that we are comfortable with and familiar with, when we are in a stressful situation, we've got our functional breathing in our toolbox. We can bring it out, we know what to do, and automatically we're going to feel better because we can take ourselves out of that fight or flight by what we have learned and just calm everything down and just deal with whatever the stressful situation is, but maybe a little bit more logically and safely.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. So there's a twofold thing here. So by practicing, by training the functional breathing, I mentioned the sensors in your brainstem before, right? By practicing the functional breathing, and specifically breathing less air, we can train our chemosensors to become less sensitive. We wouldn't have the urge to breathe so easily if something changes, if we get a little bit more stress. So you're training the system on the long run to be less susceptible to these differences in CO2 imbalance, basically, and thus being less susceptible to the impact of stressful events, right? And then there's the acute thing as well. So if you do find yourself in a stressful situation, you have a toolbox. There are these different exercises like box breathing, for example, that can immediately activate the brake of your autonomic nervous system, the parasympathetic branch, which will calm you down, basically telling your brain that you're safe and you can calm yourself down and slow everything down. Yeah.
Because I think, as well as hearing a lot more of digestive issues and IBS, we are hearing a lot more people are suffering from anxiety. I think there was a big shift during the pandemic. I think that was twofold. During the pandemic, we all became very aware of our breathing because we were wearing masks. So for most of us, the first time in our life, every time we step foot outside our home, we're wearing a mask. And a lot of people were saying, I can't wear a mask because I can't breathe. Whether they had issues or whether it was psychological, but it was a whole new thing for us all to get used to. And we're in the street, we're wearing a mask, but everybody you look at is like a culprit with COVID. So that was a big thing, and that really, I think, made a lot of people aware of breathing. And I think as well now we're hearing so many more cases of anxiety. Anxiety seems to be everywhere. And I know on social media there's a lot more now about self-care, meditation, breathing, various things to try and keep us all calmer. Life seems to be speeding up. We've got people who will deliver you fast food on their scooter. We don't even have to go to a fast food. So it's all getting a bit crazy. And I think we're paying the price for that in digestive issues, anxiety, and basically our breathing is rubbish. I mean, Maarten, we have talked about your work as functional breathing. I think we've only scratched the surface. I think I want you to come back. There's so much to talk about. Everything is connected. And I think you've given us some really, really interesting information to think about. I know I'm going to be looking at videos for functional breathing because it makes sense, doesn't it? If we have got something in our toolkit when we have a stressful situation, which happens every day, traffic, a stressful phone call, watching the news every day, we've got stress around us non-stop. But if we have got something in our toolkit that we can say, I can feel I'm getting to spiral, I know what to do now, that is going to be incredibly useful.
Yeah, I think so. And it's just one of the tools in your toolkit, right? So, but it ties in neatly with a lot of things, because obviously for proper recovery, we need good sleep. If you're breathing wrong during the day, you're not breathing optimally during the night, which may also impact your sleep. And there's been a lot of information and a lot of studies on that. Also, when you breathe functionally, your autonomic nervous system, so the brake pedal and the gas pedal, they're more in balance, which also has a very big impact on the status of your gut, where the microbiome houses. Other way around, your microbiome, if it is happy, so to say, it will also stimulate the autonomic nervous system in a way that it prefers, that it balances out more parasympathetically, which is the rest and digest. So if we are very stressed and we have the gas pedal on all day long, our gut won't function so properly. And we also will not get all the nutrients that we want. Plus the breathing, etc., bad sleep, so you get into a negative spiral. The good thing is that we can change all that, but we need to have the tools to do that. So that's one of my goals as a therapist and a professor as well, to show that it's, we can turn it around. And the good thing is that we can all do it ourselves, really. We need to have the right tools, I guess.
And we need the education from somebody like you who knows what they're talking about and can explain it in a way that we can all get to grips with. Maarten, before we finish, is there anything else you want to cover? I'm going to have you back. I shall track you down. Yeah. Is there anything else you want to cover? Any advice? Any pearls of wisdom?
Pearls of wisdom, wow. Yeah, I guess make sure that you move enough, eat the right food, which is very difficult for most people to understand what is the right food. It's different for everybody, but eat varied. That's the main advice. Breathe through the nose. Keep your mouth shut. Use it only for talking and eating.
Oh, I love that.
We don't eat with the nose, right? So why should we breathe with the mouth? It's useful when we are exercising, for example, and we reach a certain level of intensity. Then obviously, in order to increase the ventilation that is needed, we need to breathe through our mouth. But during daily life, we don't need to breathe through our mouth. Just breathe through your nose.
I've just got one question. It's probably really stupid. Is there any difference in inhaling germs if you breathe through your nose or your mouth in a crowded situation than through your mouth?
In any situation.
Every situation, yes. Breathe through your nose, not your mouth.
Yes, yeah. Because the nose is specifically designed, right? It has all these filters, like you said. Plus it breathes this gas from the endothelial walls, nitric oxide, which is basically like a sterilizing of the air. So it helps you clean, it basically helps the function of the filters. Yeah, so always try to breathe through your nose.
Because it's not really until you've got a cold, you realise you've got a blocked nose and you might have sinus issues and pain. It's not really then you think, oh, I've got to breathe through. You notice you're breathing through your mouth.
Sure.
Because it's not a general thing.
Sure, yeah. I mean, even when I have a cold, and so for example, I sleep with a mouth sticker at night because it promotes my nasal breathing during the night, and it actually helps me breathe or sleep better.
Whoa.
Yeah,
Backtrack on this one. So you are basically, I mean, I've got a vision of a piece of sellotape across your mouth.
Yeah, no, it's more
technical than that.
A little bit more, yeah. So there's all kinds of different things that people do, but we use a tape called myotape, and I don't want to make an advertisement or something, but it helps me because it's kind of like the elastic sport tape, like a rectangle with an opening in the middle. So if you need to, you could still breathe through your mouth, but because it's elastic, it pulls your lips together and it prevents you from breathing through your mouth. So you will have to breathe through your nose.
Now, is that because we generally breathe through our mouth when we sleep?
Yeah. And when you do that, then obviously it will have many, like we can talk a whole session about.
Absolutely. I think this is the route we're going to have to go down. Sleep, breathing and snoring. I mean, that's going to be huge.
Yeah. But to come back to what I said earlier, so if I have a cold, I will have a blocked nose. And if I try to breathe through my nose then during the night, I will have air hunger, because obviously breathing through your nose isn't so comfortable. But it's something that we need to do as much as we can to train the systems to basically increase the oxygen delivery to wherever it's needed. So breathe through the nose. Yes.
You're so coming back.
Okay, that's settled then.
Yeah, definitely. Maarten, thank you so much. I mean, I feel very excited. I have a real life professor sitting here, and the way you explain things is just fantastic.
Thank you so much.
You're definitely going to come back. I mean, we need to talk about functional breathing again, and maybe we can do some functional breathing exercises together. I'm up for that. I've done a bit of box breathing in my time, I have to say.
Yeah.
And I think we just need to explore more about the breathing, because we're doing it all the time, every day, without even thinking. But there's a lot we can do to make our whole mental and physical health system better by breathing correctly.
Exactly. Yeah.
Maarten, thank you. This has been absolutely brilliant.
I thought so too. Very good.
Well, I do hope you enjoyed that conversation, and thank you for listening. I absolutely loved it. And yes, I will get Maarten back. Please subscribe for future episodes on whatever platform you are listening to, and it is free. Don't forget to share this podcast. And if you have a story to tell, please contact me on allaboutyoupodcast@yahoo.com, and let's get your story told.